I think, what I had said at the event was so profound. When I said, unpopular opinion is don't love sports. Because
now break that down. That's one of the ones you got to hit the brake on. You got to cruise on that. Break down when you say, because when you said, I was like, I know where you're going, but I think we got to give a couple minutes on that. When you say don't love sports, break that down. What you mean?
Well, what I mean is simply this. You can be passionate about sports and you should compete to win, but don't be in love with something that there is a definite end.
Yeah.
It's temporal.
So in other words, you focusing on what's priority in the big picture of life.
Yeah, because what I compared it to was you're experiencing what would be like the effects of a death or a very bad divorce. When
that was huge.
When you look at some of the documentaries and you see some of the professional athletes talk about, their careers and even guys that have went on to make it into the Hall of Fame, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball.
I know where you're going.
And it be guys that be like, I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. I just knew I had a talent, and I was blessed with this great ability that God gave me, and I took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And then they talk about their life after, and it was such an easy thing for them to be able to transition afterwards.
Yeah.
And I look at their situations, and I'm like, that's it. That's it right there. I liked playing. I used it to my advantage.
Yeah.
But I didn't allow it to consume me, use me, and eat me up.
Yeah.
Because I was told I have to love it.
What's up, student athlete world? It's your boy Lester Sanders here from Canton, Ohio, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And this is I Am Student Athlete.
What's good, student athlete world? Welcome to the I Am Student Athlete podcast. I am Lester Sanders, your host, and this is
Jay Keys, your co-host.
We're coming to you straight out of Canton, Ohio, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This is the podcast where we coach you to be triple-double mindset student athletes, which is to be great, number 1, in the classroom, number 2, on the field of court, and number 3, in the game of life. Today's topic, we're going to focus on sports and mental health.
Absolutely.
Man, that's a huge topic right now when we're talking about working with student athletes, sports and mental health. Why do you think this topic is important?
Well, the topic is important for me personally because my background as a former athlete, I was able to play on different levels from the time I was a youth, all the way up to collegiate. And I've been fortunate. To have some different experiences on, some different stages, different platforms. When you think about, Midget League and Pop Warner, you think about, middle school. I was able to play, AAU basketball, when I was in middle school, before AAU became what it is today. The product that you see today was not the product that it was when I was in middle school. They only took, what they felt like were the best, at that level. So there was probably like only a couple people that may be selected, from, your middle school,
like your middle
team,
school area,
your high school team, from that area and whatnot, and then you would be able to, travel around this circuit, playing basketball against people from all around the country, and be able to, measure up, your skill level, your ability against those that were perceived as the best, in basketball, at that time. So, from there, I had the opportunity to play high school and then had the opportunity to play collegiately. And after those experiences, then I began to deal with some mental health type issues because it was no longer available to me. I had to deal with some, identity issues. I didn't necessarily know, who I was, as a person, as an individual, because, this persona that I functioned under was, Jay Keys, the basketball player, So once that tagline in regards to the basketball player was removed from me, I was just left with Jay Keys, and I didn't know how to deal with that.
You was on the island by yourself.
I felt like I was on the island by myself.
No, it's even though you played a different sport, I played football, you played basketball, walking along that timeline when you start talking about Major League Football, middle school, high school, and then, I didn't get a scholarship out of college. I walked on at Kent State University, but I had to face the same question a little bit earlier of who am I without the ball? And that's a space, and I said island for a particular reason, because when that title of athlete is removed, now you feel like you're on an island, and now you say, because I've put so many years and this has been a part of my life and a big piece of my identity, now it's like, what do I do without the ball?
Right.
And so, we both work with student athletes. You have an organization, I have an organization. We working together on this podcast. And, this is a critical topic because we could talk about, we could come up with different podcast titles and focus on the best of the best in the country. We could talk about the best athletes. We could do a top 10 list of who the best athletes. We could focus on those things, and we probably will get to them down the road. But I think it's key that we focus on sports and mental health, because at the end of the day, only 2% of athletes get scholarships to go play in college. And so there's a bigger portion of the population, 98%, is going to have to figure out a transition. So I think it's important for those that's working in student athlete, while we are preparing athletes for competition, and those athletes who will go to the collegiate level, and those athletes who even go to the pro, we got to provide that support. But at the end of the day, it's going in. Some windows is longer, some windows is shorter, so it's huge. So your organization, the WIN Project, has put together a 4-part community summit type series. So you've already had one, and so there's 3 more left. And so I saw on your Instagram page, the caption said, "Sports are good and can even be called great. They provide opportunities, access to education, and even ways out of poverty. But what happens when those experiences on the field or court aren't enough? How do our kids deal with the disappointment if they don't become who they are pushed to be?" That's crazy. Because it's a lot of people who are putting all their eggs in one basket through the vehicle of sport. And then if they don't go to the next level, they're not prepared for what's next. And they're pushed to be that themselves, coaches, parents, and the community. And then it says, how do they recover their identity? Who are they without the ball in their hands? And how do they deal with the separation when sports are over? So those are many questions that the summit is designed to deal with and to tackle and to wrestle with.
Absolutely.
So just kind of break down to us, tell our viewers what the WIN Project is, why did you start it, and then how did you and your wife, who run and co-founded the organization, why did you pick the topic of mental health and sports in these 4 community forums that y'all going to be putting on in the Canton community? In
regards to the sense of urgency, we've come to realize that, you know, people within our community, you know, have certain, you know, ideas and personas in regards to, you know, where they had saw themselves and where they see their children per se. And so there's this thing where we condition our youth, our children, and, you know, even when we were youth, have been conditioned, you know, as, you know, former athletes to, you know, grow up loving this sport and grow up, you know, being passionate about this sport, being driven about this sport, you know, goal oriented about this sport. And, you know, and you want to ride this thing out. You want to maximize your talent, you know, to the best of your ability so that you could become a professional athlete, you know, and all of us had that vision, had that goal, had that dream of being able to walk across that stage and shake the commissioner's hand because you knew when you shook that commissioner's hand, your life.
Talk about draft day.
Draft day. You knew that your life was going to be changed forever, not only for yourself, but for your family, for your mother, for your father, you know, your loved ones, and so forth and so on. So we carry that with us, you know, and trying to obtain that. Now that's on our shoulders, okay? But the thing is, as driven as we were to try to obtain those goals, there was never anything that was reiterated and engrafted in us of precedence that if this does not work out, we have some other things on the back end that we want to groom you in as well, that we want to, because I'm going to say conditioning, because when you're an athlete, you have to go through conditioning in order to become the top performer that you want to be. So nobody was conditioning us for those situations and opportunities if sports did not work out. You know, but I never had anybody, you know, kind of drop jewels on me or even try to like mentor me from that standpoint of, hey, maybe you need to start taking a look at this if that doesn't work out, you know. And I wish I would have had somebody, you know, really impress that upon me the way that they impressed, you know, my talent in you know, in regards to playing basketball.
So don't build the athlete, but build the student athlete.
Build the student athlete, build the person. You know, because, you know, even when it's all said and done, I mean, you will have to remove yourself from being a student athlete, and you're left with the person. True. So now, the thing that I like to use is gifts and talents. What are we cultivating? Because your talents eventually diminish. You know, you're only going to be so skilled at dribbling the basketball and shooting the basketball for so long. And if you don't continue to stick with it and work at it, then it's going to diminish. So what are you left with? You're left with your gifts.
And you know, we kind of take the same approach. I coached defensive backs at Canton McKinley, freshman defensive backs. And I always told them, you think I'm talking about football, but I'm really talking about life.
Yes.
So everything that I'm telling you or trying to help you get better in through this game is really an attention getter for the game of life. And so I've been doing student athlete development. It's going on 10 years now.
Good. That's awesome.
In addition to the stint that I had as coaching, but I let the student athletes that I work with, like, once again, this ain't just about, or this is not just about you the athlete. This is about you the person. And where you going. And so I think that's critical, especially in today's society, 2023 and beyond, that we have the message that we're trying to develop you as the person, not just as an athlete. And I think it's important that we make sure that our student athletes know that sports may be a part of the big picture, but do you see the big picture? Because sports is not the big picture. because when you really think about even a college career or a professional career, we really can't say that it's a career. It's a stint.
It's a stint.
It's a stint
Absolutely.
in college. It's a stint in playing professional.
Absolutely.
Because most athletes only playing 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
A career is over a span of time. The average American works 30 to 35 years.
Exactly.
And so we want all our student athletes to just change their perspective in the sense of looking at your life in the big picture.
Right.
We're not saying don't go hard.
Right.
With preparing for your sport
right.
and trying to be the best in your sport,
right.
but just understand that that sport is a part of the big picture of the totality of your life.
Right.
And whenever your time is over, you want to be prepared to make that overall transition.
Right. And I know you pay attention, you know, to analytics and, you know, percentages and things of that nature. And that's something that we have to be more conscious of. You know, there are the percentage of athletes that do not make it and have went on to, you know, in high school have been, you know, all Ohio, you know, even all American and things of that nature. The percentages of not making it are so much higher than the percentages of those who have been fortunate enough to be called a professional.
Yeah. We're going to have to find us like a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Because I would like for someone to design, to like give a visual of 8 million student athletes nationwide.
Right. Right.
And actually on NCAA.org, they got charts and like the numbers where to show like there's 8 million student athletes, but only 2% male and female get scholarships.
Right.
But I would like to even see that in a visual.
Right.
And then when you break down maybe like football,
Right.
men's and women's basketball.
Right.
Now that 2%,
right.
that gets broken down.
Right.
And so I think if student athletes can see in a visual, but also look at the graph that's on there and the data that's on there, they'll be able to start looking at the sports as a piece of my big picture.
For sure.
Or a stint in my big picture.
For sure. Because you'll have those that, you know, won't take our word for it. But as they say, you know, men lie, women lie. Numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. Yeah.
Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
So, you know, if that's presented, I think that would be a very good thing.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're doing a 4-part series through the WIN Project.
Yeah.
You know, tell our viewers when you started the WIN Project, and then how did you come up on focus on doing this 4-part series, and then go through the names of the different topics within the 4-part series?
Okay. So the WIN Project, you know, was something that was established probably about 7 years ago, you know, like on paper.
Okay.
You know, and I was constantly, you know, trying to, you know, implement and redevelop, and redevelop. And, you know, and I really didn't know exactly, you know, what direction I wanted to take it in. All I knew was I had a passion for youth and I had a passion for sports.
All right, can we take a break real quick? Now, keep that thought in mind where you was going with that. You know, sometimes in life, you get an idea. You get a business plan, or you get something that you should be doing. And oftentimes it may not happen overnight.
Right.
It may not happen over the next 6 months.
Man.
It may not happen over the first year, but you stuck with it and it's going in the right direction.
That's right.
So that's something that I think our student athletes need to know, that there's things that you'll have that you feel you should do, and it may not happen just overnight, but you got to stick with it and be able to move forward.
Yeah. Actually, the Bible calls it long suffering.
Yeah. So let's get right down to it.
Yeah. You know,
long suffering,
but
patience,
you just don't quit.
Patient. Yep.
Yeah, you don't quit, man. You just continue to keep pushing, even though things aren't turning out the way that you wanted to. You know, in this microwave society that we live in, you know, and oftentimes you don't want it to turn out that way because you're not going to produce the best product, you know, in regards to quality.
Yeah.
you know. So you want to be able to have, you know, your ups and downs, you know, your falls and your missteps.
It's called the journey.
It's the journey.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So all you do is you just clean that up, you know, and in the midst of cleaning it up, you're perfecting it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I'm perfecting my craft, you know, I'm becoming even more professional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So there are things that you can be professional in aside from just with your athletic ability.
So in other words,
obviously,
to make the connection between sports and life, you had to, in the beginning stages, you had to start working on your game.
you have to start working on your game.
Okay,
man.
cool.
You know,
cool.
but you know, when we did start implementing the WIN project, we started it off by doing some college tours. I knew that I wanted to be able to utilize some relationships and that I had been able to develop, you know, through the sports world. You know, I had an opportunity to, you know, meet a lot of coaches and, you know, and have a lot of different conversations and develop relationships. I used to work for a sports agency, Mark Termini and Associates out of Cleveland, who are now with, you know, Clutch Sports, you know, which is, you know, Rich Paul and, you know, and LeBron and all those guys or what have you. But I was like the first initial contact for Mark Termini and Associates. So I would travel, you know, to different universities, you know, scouting out different players. And then
sweet.
I would have, you know, the first initial contact, which is speaking to the parents and speaking to the athletes and letting them know, hey, about this sports agency, we're interested in X, Y, and Z, you know, and, you know, and then trying to establish a relationship from there and then kind of passing the buck.
So I heard a transferable skill in there. So whether it's high school, college, or the pros, you mentioned relationships and network. That's huge.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. And that's why, you know, you don't want to burn any bridges. You know, you always want to be able to establish good relationships with people, you know, and you always want to be able to, you know, present yourself in a like fashion, you know, without burning any bridges, because you just never know when you need to circle back around, you know, to someone to be able to extend a hand to you. You don't want no handout, you know what I mean? But you want somebody to, you know.
Because you're meeting all these people while you're playing sports, no matter whether it's high school, college, or pros. You're meeting a lot of people, so that creates a network. But then, you know, that's something that you can use when sports is over, in the sense of being able to connect and interact with people, and that's big part of how business works in the real world.
Absolutely.
Take sports off the table.
Yep.
It's all about you're only as good as your network and the current relationships and your next relationships.
Right.
Okay? So the WIN Project has started doing college tours. You know, mentoring youth in the community, and then based upon the playbook that was dropped on you, was that kind of like on where you focused on this 4-part series?
Well, let's talk about the college tours, because the college tours, you know, aren't just the average college tour. And once again, you know, like I said, you know, based upon the relationships, you know, I was able to take, you know, a college tour and magnify it, you know, and provide an experience. So when we go on our college tours, we're able to connect with the athletic departments.
Gotcha.
So not only do the kids get the college tour, but you also get access to the athletic facilities, the athletic programs, and you get to have those intimate conversations, as well as have those intimate, you know, sightseeing moments of facilities, you know, and all of those sorts of things. So, you know, they give us the you know, the backdrop of, you know, the basketball arenas, the locker rooms, you know, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, gymnastics, you know, things that, you know, people that go on a college tour don't normally get to see. You know, and then after that, you know, you have your meetings with admissions and, you know, and things of that nature, but you also get to have that conversation with the sports management programs.
Gotcha.
So that way they can let you know what's available to you if you decide to come to this university.
Okay, so so the word I get out of that is exposure.
It's exposure.
And students and student athletes need exposure. It's almost it's a classroom within itself. Being able to see things that you haven't seen before, or and experience something that you hadn't experienced before. What's the impact that you've seen that exposure has had for the students that you've had on your tours?
Well, let me tell you how deep it gets. So, for example, when we went to Kent State University, and shout out to Kent State because they did an incredible job. An incredible job when we went on our college tour. We literally had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Lieberger, who is, you know, the director of sports for Kent State.
About how many students was on this tour at Kent?
It was, we had about 20 to 25 students.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, so we had a total of about 30 people that had went, you know, on that tour. You know, so in regards to Dr. Lieberger, you know, when you use the type of language that, you know, we're accustomed to using in what we call, you know, our neighborhoods and whatnot, you know, he's the man. Yeah. Okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, and the funny thing is, you know, we always want to be able to get to the man, but we can't. So we always end up getting to the man that know the man.
Right. But you got the man.
We literally had access to that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when Dr. Lieberger, and thank God, you know, some of the kids were able to get it. You know, so when he, you know, presented what he presented, you know, to the youth that were able to come in regards to access, he said, not only, you know, will you be able to have access here at Kent State if you want to shadow, or if you choose to come here, you know, and eventually become a grad assistant, but we have relationships with the Cleveland Cavaliers. We have relationships with the Cleveland Browns. We have relationships with the Cleveland Guardians. We have relationships with Ohio State. We have relationships with the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Columbus Crew, you know. So he was letting the youth know, like, hey, whatever it is that you desire,
right,
whatever it is that you want to be a part of,
it could be possible.
It is possible.
So it wasn't the normal go to school, get a good education message.
Not at all. You know, it was everything sports. If you want to work in the front office and you want to do ticket sales, we can make that happen for you. You could come here to Kent State and we can position you to do that. Or
see, that's key.
You could go to the Cleveland Browns and do that.
But that's key though, because with 98% of high school athletes stopping their senior year in high school, there's ways that if you feel that you want to be connected with sports or possibly even earn a living through sports, there's a way to still stay connected. And I think that's important, and that's key exposure that kids need to know that just because I was the athlete and my time is over, yeah, I'll go through that process of that transition, but if I really do like sports that much, there's a whole world behind sports that I can be a part of.
And that's what the WIN Project is here to do.
Sweet.
That's what we're here to expose the youth to. You know, when I touched upon, you know, the depression and the anxiety, the things that I had dealt with, if someone would have made this more available to me, I would still be attached to sports. Even though I had the opportunity to work with a sports agency, you know, it was some things that didn't pan out because of the sense of urgency in losing my job as youth development director. I wanted to transition from youth development director to becoming an agent. But because those things were, you know, kind of short-lived, you know, the urgency for me to kind of figure out what it is I wanted to do caused me to start scrambling. And when I began to scramble, I wasn't able to make wise decisions.
Okay. So you're saying if there was whether it was, we want to call it a safety net, whether it was education, whether it was mentoring, if that would have been provided throughout the process in high school while you was in college, it'd increase the likelihood that better choice and decisions that would have been made because you would have had the information to make the right choices to the response of adversity that come along in life.
Les, if I would have known that there were six-figure paying jobs in the world of sports as an occupation, I would have turned my direction.
And that would took some pressure off your knees.
It would have took some pressure off my knees, my back, my Achilles tendon, all of that. You know, but if I would have known, you know, all of the different opportunities that, you know, has six-figure paying jobs, you know, and you know, I had already had a passion for, then it would have been an easy transition.
All right, so I want to throw this plug out here because we in 2023 and beyond, depending upon when you see this video, we got Google now.
Absolutely.
Google careers in sports.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, if you want to be connected to sports whenever your time is over, there's a whole economy around youth sports, around elementary sports, around middle school sports, around high school sports, around college sports, around professional sports. So there's a whole economy that now that you've gone through this process and the bumps and bruises of transitioning, that you can get information on your own. And that's one of the things I think with your organization, my organization as a speaker, and also the I Am Student Athlete podcast is focusing on, listen, take responsibility for your life.
Yes.
Don't wait for nobody else. And there's information that's readily available for us. And if you open your mind and say, what do I need to succeed? The universe is going to send information.
But see, once again, it goes back to the mental conditioning, you know, the four walls in which we constantly engage in. Because we're so conditioned to think that it's either you going to make it as the athlete or there's nothing else. You know what I'm saying? That we don't even consider anything else.
Yeah.
You know, for example, when we ended up taking like 80 youth to the Pro Football Hall of Fame game, we took them to the game, and one of the conversations that we had, and this was the biggest reason why I wanted to take the youth to the game, was to expose them to the atmosphere of the Pro Football Hall of Fame game. You know, and once again, because we're in this box, you know, we think the only way that you're going to be able to get out of the hood is if I'm a player or if I'm a coach.
Yeah.
So when we got to the game, the precedence was, how many occupations are there here?
Can you just identify
that you can identify at this game alone?
Right.
This multi-million-dollar event that's called the Pro Football Hall of Fame game that's in your backyard of Canton, Ohio.
Yeah. See, that's a huge way of looking at it. Not just seeing the game of the teams that's selected during this preseason game.
Right.
But how do I look at the economy?
The economy
that's
of
here
it.
Every year.
Absolutely.
In your hometown.
Absolutely. So as we began to identify these things, you know, it was the sports analysts, you have your cameramen, you have your photographers, you have your referees, you have your videographers, you have your people controlling the drones.
You got the concessions.
You got the concessions, your vendors. You know, you have your sports doctors, you have your trainers.
You got your people covering the game.
Covering the game, your statisticians, the people controlling the lights, the people controlling the scoreboards, you know, the people that's holding, you know, the first down markers and, you know, the chains.
The refs,
all of that type of stuff, you know what I mean? And these people are being compensated very well for these things. You know, even as a youth, do you realize if you established a business and you had the right conversations, you could position yourself to be a vendor at the Pro Football Hall of Fame game?
Yeah. And then I always think back, you know, with all my years of getting haircuts, I know some unpaid statisticians who know a lot of stats from athletes for decades.
Absolutely.
And for people to be able to keep that information in their head, that it's a career.
Right, right.
Not just in football or basketball, but sports across the board.
Who was our guy at McKinley? Bauer Sox?
Yeah. Charlie Bauer Sox.
Bauer Sox. Yeah, he was that guy.
Yep. Historian, statistician.
Man, his memory was just like limitless. Yep. Like he knew stats and former athletes, man, that had went back decades, you know, up to even the current, you know, athletes and all of that stuff. But yeah, that was the main thing that we wanted to drive home, you know, with the youth. So now we can start to open things up and start changing perspectives.
But because that's huge, because if a student athlete, no matter what sport, can go in the 9th grade and say, hey, this is a stint of my life and in the big picture of my life, and I'm going to go hard at this. I'm going to do my very best, but because I'm built in other areas of my life for a career path and my career exploration, now you don't get into where people feeling like if this one avenue don't work, it's over. So it's huge, you know, I think at this particular point in time where people can see the options that I have and maybe how this option, if it stops, can open doors for other avenues and other corridors to be able to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do, you know, 6 college tours, 3 the first semester, 3 the second semester.
Okay.
And then while these college tours are going on throughout the school year, you know, we implement wraparound services that deal with the mental health aspect.
Got you.
And this is what brought us to the workshops.
Okay, so mental health and life skills.
Mental health and life skills.
Got you. Okay.
Yes.
So you have 4 workshops. What was the overall title for the 4 workshops, and then break down the subtitles within each part of the 4-part series?
Okay, so it's called After the Ball Drops: The Dark Side of Mental Health in Sports. Okay. And the part 1 that we had of this series was addressing identity. Or the loss of identity. And we had former...
And wasn't it the identity and a detachment from the sport?
Identity and detachment. Thank you for that. Yes, it was exactly that. And, you know, our vision, our goal behind it was to be able to bring in, you know, former athletes, you know, so that way they could talk about, you know, their experiences and how they were able to continue to do life, you know, without sports. You know, once again, we're not talking about slouches. We're talking about, you know, former all Ohio guys, you know, all county guys, all inland district, you know, type guys, people that filled the arenas. Especially, you know, when we came up, you know, the arenas were filled. Fawcett Stadium was filled. The field house was filled. You know what I mean? So we provided that entertainment on the weekends. You know, now they do, you know, basketball games on Tuesdays, but when we played, you know, it was Friday and Saturday. And you have to remember, we grew up in a county where high school sports are everything. So we were the entertainment. We were the platform.
Because
how do you deal with that when it's done?
Because Ohio, it got 88 counties. Stark County is one of the 88. And I know there's some other counties where sports are huge in Ohio. But if there's a top 10, I know Stark County is in the top 10 for sports in Ohio.
Absolutely. I mean, all you got to do is look at our track record and see how many professional athletes have come out of Little Stark County. You know, and
that's not just from McKinley.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, with the first event, the detachment, you know, and identity, we had our clinician, Shauna Turner, who came, you know, to represent from a professional standpoint in regards to mental health. We also had Kenny Peterson, who was a former professional athlete.
7-year vet.
7-year veteran, played for the Green Bay Packers and then also the Denver Broncos. went to the Ohio State University, won national championship on a collegiate level, and then also won a national championship on a high school level.
Yeah.
So, you know, his resume speaks for itself.
Right.
And then we also had Adrian Culler, who went to Glen Oak High School, was a phenomenal football player.
I would know. I had to tackle him.
So you would know very well.
It was like a cannonball trying to tackle.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was a junior, but he was a senior, but still.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, you know all about him.
Yeah.
You know, you got to see it firsthand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Excellent.
And then his
football
journey
player.
leaving Glen Oak, he
went to a junior college.
junior college.
Yep. And then actually went to Ohio State as a preferred walk-on. You know,
And he had a nice junior college career too.
had a very
He was
phenomenal,
like one of the top junior colleges.
phenomenal
Yeah.
junior college career.
See, and so it's huge, and I wanted to highlight the junior college career because a lot of times students think whether it's over altogether or they think it's over because they didn't have the right grades to get scholarships, that there's options that you can at least try to give yourself a shot. We talked about prep schools in the earlier episodes.
Right.
You benefited from going to a prep school.
Right.
You got your junior colleges.
Right.
And those are steps you can take to see if you or to give yourself another shot.
Right.
To try to earn a scholarship.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also had Robin Holland, who's with NAMI. Shout out to NAMI. And we thank you guys, you know, once again for partnering with us and for believing in the vision. You know,
Now, is NAMI a mental health based nonprofit in Stark County?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, you can find NAMI, you know, right downtown Canton, right off of Tuss, and I want to say like 4th Street, I believe. But it's right next to Stars Restaurant. So shout out to NAMI and shout out to Robin Holland, you know, for joining forces with us.
Yeah, because I want to give you props on the balance of the facilitators that you had. You had a professional athlete. You had an athlete who capped out in junior college. Then you had a clinician, and mental health professional.
Yes.
To be able to, because it's one thing to talk about a topic, but it's another thing to have balance across the board where you're getting a perspective from the professional side of dealing with mental health, but then also you had the athletic side. Because I was blown away when, you know, Kenny Peterson said, you know, being a 7-year vet,
Right.
that it wasn't the money that he was going to be missing being in the league.
Right.
It was just the thing I've done after all these years is over now.
It's over now. That's over now. And see, and that's the thing.
And that was a transition that really shook him.
Yes.
And I learned something that I didn't even know about him. And I
Right.
played with him in high school and followed his career all the way through.
But that's the thing that our athletes are dealing with, you know, and most athletes, you know, because of the machismo, the ego,
Right.
and things of that nature, don't really want to make themselves vulnerable in regards to these conversations.
Yeah.
But we're creating a platform to let them know, hey, man, it's all right. I can identify with this.
See, and I want to pause and say this. You know, there's a perspective out there that might say, well, they're participating in sports, they should automatically be building other areas of their lives.
Right.
But for people who think that perspective, you're allowed to have your perspective, but sometimes going through the process, you don't realize how much tunnel vision some student athletes are in due to life experiences, and then what have they been exposed to or not exposed to.
Right.
So it's something real.
Right.
And if we really believe in the proverb, the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, we got to take a look at, are all student athletes getting the right information?
Right.
So that they can have different perspectives as they going on that journey or that stint, as we call it in sports.
Yeah, that tunnel vision, man. Just think about, you know, when Adrian Culler, you know, gave his speech, you know, his dialogue, you know what I mean? It was profound, you know, and just talking about the things that were going on at home.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, he had tunnel vision because he wanted to create an environment for his mother.
And everybody got different circumstances, and you got to put into the equation that there are some circumstances that people are going through that might make the perspective that they have narrow,
right? Because
they're in survival mode,
right,
or they're in overcoming adversity mode.
And just think about the pressure when you've been dubbed as the one.
Yeah.
You know, from the family, from the community, from the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You
so
know,
you got these spotlights from different angles and different people saying that you should be this. And if that doesn't happen, who says, okay, now let me show you these options? Exactly. Yeah, because I remember, you know, outside of the visits that I had from some colleges, trying to shop myself around, it wasn't, hey, now that sports is over, here go the top 10 list things that you should focus on. You know, that doesn't exist across the board, but we're working on changing those things and getting this message across to make sure that student athletes are balanced.
Yeah, we're left to figure it out all by ourselves when all the while we've been groomed with a team-oriented mindset from the time we were youth.
So where's the team after the sports is over?
Where's the team after the sports is over?
Yeah.
So the team is the win project.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Cool. So you got 3 more community forums that's a part of this 4-part series.
Yes.
So February 7th, you got one coming up. What topics you dealing with there?
We're dealing with depression and anxiety.
Okay.
And we'll be having Michael Perini, who played at Kent State University once again, went to Massillon, Washington High School. Mike Perini was an excellent athlete. One of the best point guards I've ever seen, you know, come out of Stark County. He's just a natural leader, a natural go-getter, man. He's somebody that I've always been impressed with, just in regards to his ability and the way that he's able to command and lead. He's a natural leader. So he also had the opportunity to play professional overseas. Okay. And he will be a part of our next event. And then we'll have Amber Robinson, who had went to Canton McKinley, and then she ended up transferring to North Canton. Amber went on and, you know, and she created such a niche and a lane for herself, coming from a family of basketball players, starting with her dad, Howard Robinson, who was a phenomenal basketball player at Canton McKinley, and then also Troy Robinson, who had played at Timpkin High School.
That was her brother,
who was her brother. So, you know, she went on, she accomplished a whole lot of things, you know, achieved a lot of accolades, you know, was one of the, you know, highest female scorers, you know, in Stark County. I believe she even, you know, broke the record at one time or something like that, you know, but it's up there. It's up there, you know, so that in itself tells you, you know, in regards to her ability and her talent, you know, and I believe she also received a scholarship, you know, to play collegiate basketball. But, you know, once again, she's somebody that identifies with, you know, that what's next, you know, when basketball was over for her.
Okay.
And then we also have, you know, our next clinician, you know, who will be involved with the event, and also, you know, Robin Holland and, you know, Nami, that will be present as well.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So then you got March 14th. What you focus? What's the topic? The subtopic there?
March 14th is a very sensitive subject. We'll be discussing suicide.
Gotcha.
And we're going to take a deep look into how athletes are affected, you know, with suicide.
And then you got April 11th.
Yes, April 11th we'll be discussing drugs and alcohol. The person that has agreed to be the main speaker for that event, His story is phenomenal.
Okay.
It is phenomenal. You know.
Is that the Nick Davis?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It is him.
Okay.
And you know, and Nick, you know, is another guy that came out of Washington Maslin High School, and wow. You know, I would be doing an injustice for me to kind of dive into, you know, his story and what he been through. I mean, you don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss these next few events, you know, because they will be very, very impactful. Right. And it's something that we all can relate to, you know. Aside from what's going on, you know, in our lives as, you know, athletes and stuff, but we see these things at home. Right. We see these things, you know, in our communities, families, you know, friends and associates. Yeah. This is something that needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about, and it needs to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah. So, you know, I think this is huge because whether it's student athletes, whether it's the topics that you mentioned, or there's a whole host of other topics, even outside of what we focus on with this podcast and with your organization. And there's some tough conversations.
Some tough conversations.
That has to be had.
Yes.
And it's just needed.
Yeah.
And we got to get to a point in our society where we don't look at it as something negative. Right. That we're dealing with certain subjects. Right. Because we can save lives dealing with certain subjects.
And that's
we can save heartache and pain with certain subjects. Because we've all been through times in our lives where you didn't have information or support going through, and then you got it afterwards, and you think about like, man, it would have been so much easier to get through if I would have had that. But then we got times in our lives where we were prepared for stuff, and you're like, man, I'm glad I was prepared. So this is a I'm glad I'm prepared moment to have these conversations, to be able to give our student athletes, those who parent our student athletes, those who coach, those who teaching, and those who watch or are fans of our student athletes.
Right, and absolutely, and that's what it's all about. Because I mean, when you actually think about, you know, something as severe as suicide, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, that's final.
That's final.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to get to that point.
And those numbers in sports and out of sports are climbing.
Right.
In various ethnic backgrounds.
Yes.
Various socioeconomic status.
Yes.
So that's one of them things. And, you know, it's been in my family. And so that's one of them topics. Is like, listen, we dealing with real life here.
Right.
So when you told me about the topics, I'm sitting here like, hey man, we got to highlight this.
Right.
We got to bring information to this, because these are some decisions that's final, that if maybe people had some more information and more support, they don't choose a final response.
Right. More conversations.
Yeah.
You remember what Kenny had said? He said one of the things that he suffered with was, I had no one to talk to.
So a national champion.
National champion.
At The Ohio State University.
The Ohio State
Power
University.
5. A professional athlete of 7 years.
7 years.
So.
And not to mention his stature. This big old grizzly bear.
Yeah.
That's up here telling his story and then shedding tears.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the situation was that severe for him.
And the thing, when I watched it, I'm like, wow. He had people talking to him as the athlete, but didn't have people talking to him as the man.
As the man.
And then when we're talking about student athletes, we need people to talk to the men that play the sports as men, and the women who play the sports as women, because they're not just student athletes. So I think this is huge. This is groundbreaking work that is taking place across the country, but I think the sense of urgency is beginning to, the meter is starting to go up.
Absolutely. You know, when I think about professional sports, there is one job that's overlooked, and I believe is probably the most important job that someone could probably have in professional sports. You want to know what that is?
What's that?
The chaplain.
Yeah.
It's the chaplain.
Yeah, because I was going down the list of people who work with teams, but that chaplain is huge. Not just on the professional level, not just on the the college level, but I think even high school.
Grassroots.
In middle schools, even
Always
start
starts at the
having
grassroots
chaplains
level.
and those who focus on life skills.
Life skills.
To really start working with student athletes. And I think it's even more critical in middle school and high school, because now, just like sports, you're gaining skill as you go forward, but that's really important there to be able to gain those life skills early as possible.
But it focuses on the cultivation of the person, you know, which you had spoke of, you know, once again, in regards to Kenny. You know, everybody talked around him as the athlete, but nobody took the time to really engage with him as the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
not
that's
the way
what,
that it should have been. Yeah.
And that's what caused, you know, that tear within him.
Yeah. Yeah. 2% of student athletes only get the full ride or partial to play to do athletics in college.
Right. Wow, 2% even for a partial?
Well, I'm talking about together.
Yeah.
So like that's why I say a major graph needs to be done. There's like 8 million. I've been studying this thing for years.
Yeah.
And there's a difference from looking at a number perspective or a percentage perspective versus like a graph that shows 8 million student athletes.
Right.
It's like 7.5 million to 8 million student athletes. But across the board, so you think about 8 million, there's only like 4,300 colleges nationwide. There's only so many teams out of the 4,300 schools, and then some of them schools don't even have sports.
Right.
So when you talk about only 2%, and I'm gonna stand strong on this, it's not a bad thing that is only 2%, because there's only so many colleges and only so many teams. The bad part is if our student athletes are not prepared at high school for that drop off.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, colleges can't give everybody scholarships.
That's right.
Every student athlete can't get a scholarship because there's only so much space on each team.
Yep.
So the bad part, if there's a bad part, is not preparing our student athletes for the transition, because there's only a small percentage, whether it's full ride, partial, or a couple bucks,
Right.
that get to go to the next level.
Right.
Now I don't know the percentage of who just walk on or play Division III, but out of those who get dollars, between Division I and Division II, athletically, is only 2%.
Wow.
And so my thing is, if I can get student athletes to see 2% out of 7 to 8 million student athletes, then that can open the door to say, I can't put all my eggs in one basket. And I'm going to do my very best that if I don't get if my number isn't called, I can have no regrets.
Yeah.
Because now I know the steps I'm going to take.
Right.
Because I tell people all the time, especially for that 2%, and I go ahead and throw what made me see it, and then you can go ahead. I tell people all the time, you know, on Sports Center, you know, that show Randy Moss on, he got that segment about you got Moss.
Right.
When I'm walking on at Kent State University, and Kent was playing Marshall in Kent, and I watched the level of athlete that he was.
Right.
The first thing I said was, now I see possibly why I didn't get a scholarship. Because I'm a safety 5'7". Randy Moss vertical is out of this world. It's called pitch and catch. It's called speed. So it helped open my mind to say, okay, it's levels to this.
Yeah.
And if we can get middle school, high school, and college, middle school and high school students to see is levels to this, and then it's levels to college. Let's keep it real. I think it was when a Big Ten, ACC school play a MAC school or a MAC equivalent school across the country, on average, you see the difference. And it's just the reality that is level to sports.
Yeah.
But so what's your take or your advice on the 2%?
Well, I thought you explained, very well just in regards to the competition within the competition. As athletes, we're competing, on game day against the opponent, but you're also competing against those other athletes all across the world. Yeah. So it's a competition within a competition if you want to be able to obtain that scholarship. And you have to understand these things. Aside from the whole mental health aspect of it, you have those types of pressures. And the last thing that you want to see is an athlete doing something as detriment as committing suicide based on pressure. We don't want it. We don't want that. We don't want that.
Or lack of information.
Yeah.
Proverbs says, "In all you're getting, get understanding."
Get understanding.
And I think if we get more understanding of the sport that you play, the business of sports, and the big picture of overall life, then you won't. It decreases the chance that you get into a space of lack of hope or despair because you have understanding of how things work.
Absolutely.
And Randy Shownuff was a professor that day.
Right.
And I understand, and really, before the game was over, I kind of knew probably with 4 games left, I'm done walking on, and I'm going pro in something other than sports.
Yeah. I think, what I had said at the event was so profound, when I said, unpopular opinion is don't love sports. Because
now break that down. That's one of the ones you got to hit the brake on. You got to cruise on that. Break down when you say, because when you said, I was like, I know where you're going, but I think we got to give a couple minutes on that. When you say don't love sports, break that down. What you mean?
Well, what I mean is simply this: you can be passionate about sports, and you should compete to win. But don't be in love with something that there is a definite end. It's temporal.
So in other words, you focusing on what's priority in the big picture of life.
Yeah, because what I compared it to was you're experiencing what would be like the effects of a death or a very bad divorce. When you look at some of the documentaries and you see some of the professional athletes talk about, their careers and even guys that have went on to make it into the Hall of Fame, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball.
I know where you're going.
And it be guys that be like, I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. I just knew I had a talent, and I was blessed with this great ability that God gave me, and I took advantage of it. And then they talk about their life after, and it was such an easy thing for them to be able to transition afterwards. And I look at their situations, and I'm like, that's it. That's it right there. I liked playing. I used it to my advantage. But I didn't allow it to consume me, use me, and eat me up. Because I was told I have to love it.
They had it in proper perspective of what it was in their life.
And God just blessed them to be these freaks of nature. So, you got guys like Warren Sapp that's 300 plus pounds running a 4.5.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that type of stuff is just crazy. It's asinine when you think about it.
300 pounds running a 4.5. I'm 5'7", tip top shape, 178, running a 4.5.
You see what I mean? That's crazy, man. Like you literally got grizzly bears running at you at super high speed. You know what I'm saying? In the form of a human body.
So you said it's like a divorce and a what? A death?
It's like a death. A divorce and a death.
But you know what? when we think about, I don't want to say no names, but when we think about the athletes who stay around too long, maybe they stay around because they don't want to go to the funeral of their career.
Exactly.
And they put their body through even more.
Exactly.
Because they don't want to face the closing of the casket of their career.
Yep.
Which means I play longer and I put more wear and tear on my body.
What am I going to do from here?
Yeah. And that's a huge question. I'm glad that we get the opportunity to be able to prepare student athletes for that, because at the end of the day, it's going to come. I say it, and I don't care if people get tired of me. I never seen a 55-year-old tailback.
That's right, man. That's the one thing that we all have in common.
Yeah, yeah.
The one thing.
It's gonna stop.
It's gonna stop.
It's gonna stop. Yeah. So, you know, my goal is for student athletes is to look at the big picture of their life. And sports can be a part of it, but sports can't be all your life.
No.
And so, any last words you want to say before we close out?
Hey, I just want you know, people to really begin to take a look at this. You know, if you have youth in your household, you know, who are involved in sports, and don't get it twisted. We encourage you to have your children involved in sports. It's a good thing. You know, you learn a lot of positive
Builds
things,
character,
man.
discipline, a whole bunch of
Absolutely.
transferables.
Absolutely. But it's time to start really engaging and focusing on the other side of it. You know, because there is an other side. We can't pretend that it isn't, you know, and continue to neglect these things, you know. And this is all about, you know, being able to create a well-rounded individual. You know, you don't want to
focus.
Yeah, you don't want to, you know, hinder your child in any perspective, you know, because you only get one crack at this in regards to being a parent.
There's no do-overs.
It's no do-overs.
No draft.
Right. So you want to equip them with as much as you can possibly equip them so that they can be totally prepared for this thing that we are all experiencing, which is called life.
Yeah. We appreciate that you have acted out on the vision and the dream that's been put inside of you and the service that's needed for this community. I look forward to continue to keep working with you.
My man.
We all on the same battlefield.
No doubt about it.
At the end of the day, we all in the same thing of making sure that student athletes get the information that they need. Because at the end of the day, I just said the number, it's like 7 to 8 million student athletes.
Yeah.
It's enough work out here for everybody.
That's right.
At the end of the day.
That's right.
Student athlete world, we're out of time, but certainly not out of message. This is the I Am Student Athlete podcast, and remember that greatness is a process and you are more than an athlete. Peace.